Hello and welcome to today's reflection. Usually I am more fond of the New Testament and the Psalms and Isaiah than the rest of the Old Testament, but my eye was caught by the reading from Exodus, in which we've been following the family of Jacob, with the story of Joseph and the famine in Egypt. It's funny how when you read a biblical book several times, you see things differently each time. And this is one of those occasions. The story of Moses being born and adopted by Pharaoh's daughter was last week. So we see now the beginning of Moses taking his place in history properly. So I will read from Exodus chapter 2. One day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw two Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "What I did must have become known." When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away. But Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. When the girls returned to rule their father, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "And where is he, Reuel?" asked his daughters. "Why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat." Moses agreed to stay with the man, who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." The thing that struck me about this story is, why were 7 women sent to the well without a male escort to prevent them being attacked by the shepherds? It obviously happened every day because their dad asked them, why were they back early? So why didn't he escort them? When I got this idea into my head, I thought about the usual way the commentaries look at this part of Moses' story as being the beginning of Exodus. First, Moses leaves Egypt, and he comes back with instructions from God. He leads the rest of the Israelites out of Egypt. But the story of Jacob and his family has always been about relationship and kinship, about how this family fitted in with other people, or alternately, how they didn't fit in with other people. If you think about Moses' early life, Pharaoh's daughter may have wanted to keep the baby and rear him as her own. But what about the others around him? The Pharaoh's other relatives, the court officials, even the servants and slaves. I bet there was a fair bit of racial prejudice and putting him down. He wouldn't have been able to forget his origins, even if he was dressed like an Egyptian. Another thought, would Moses have been brought up to worship the Egyptian gods? If so, meeting God, the real God, through the burning bush would have been a real double whammy. Just one God? and the one that belongs to the Hebrews? So when he attacked the Egyptian guard who was ill-treating the Hebrew slave, Moses wasn't thinking like a free-born Egyptian who could have instructed the guard to be more merciful and been obeyed. He didn't have that kind of inbuilt authority. And when he went back later and told 2 Hebrew men not to fight, they had no respect for him either, because he was perceived as being on the side of the enemy. A quisling, they used to call them. He was a foreigner in his own land, a total outsider. Even his adoptive grandfather, the Pharaoh, wanted to kill him. In our suburban backwater, it's very difficult to understand the deep-seated difficulties of life that people experience when they're not accepted into the community they live in. They could be refugees or just people coming to work and coming to live here and work legitimately. Or they could have the wrong religion. Anti-Semitism is still with us, so is Islamophobia. And we may not have thought about it, but many of us are not too polite to those who knock on the door and try to give us religious pamphlets. They're just different. They belong to the other, not to us. Moses needed the dysfunctional upbringing that he received. He needed to know how all humanity lived, not just his own tribe. To control the exodus of all these people, he had to have God's authority, not a tribal leadership authority, and I expect that is why God chose him. God has a specific task for each one of us. He uses our strengths, obviously, but also he uses our weaknesses. He uses those episodes in our lives that we think have damaged us and turns them to good, and encourages us to live our lives in his service, not because we are capable and useful, nor in spite of our problems, but because he cherishes us just as we are, just as we have turned out to be. Let us finish with a prayer. My Lord and my God, we bring ourselves to your service with all the things that have gone wrong and all the things that have gone right. And we ask you to use us to further your kingdom. Amen. Bye-bye for now. I hope that you have a safe and happy week and that you enjoy the spring weather. God bless.